lot of the games I've been playing lately have been going in hard on the hacking and lockpicking minigames. Pragmata, Replaced, and Mouse PI all feature examples of such things, and between them demonstrate three starkly contrasting approaches to the art form. So it feels like a good time to talk about hacking minigames, what they are, why they exist, how they can be good, and how they can be a Chinese water torture machine loaded with bat diarrhea. So let's structure those out as the chapter headings for this video and launch into it bold as brass. You fucking know what a hacking minigame is. If the player is gated from a new area or item or piece of information by a small gameplay challenge presented with the context of needing to bypass some kind of lock that's unrelated to the game's standard gameplay loop and that doesn't require you to go anywhere else or find a key or something like that, then we have ourselves a hacking minigame. I don't even want to speculate on when these first came about, because the definition is vague enough that I know some smug asshole will have played something one could arguably call a hacking minigame in Mr. Bingy Goes Boing for the ZX Spectrum or whatever, but I want to say they came into their own with the rise of the immersive sim. The first System Shock game had a very elaborate hacking system where you essentially have to go into cyberspace and play Descent for a while every now and again. The sequel, System Shock 2, scaled that down to something much closer to what we expect nowadays from a hacking minigame. GUI window, little grid of squares, click, 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 click. Then of course in the spiritual sequel to that, Bioshock, they scaled it back up again to that crazy-ass pipe dream business, which I would be less down on if the game had obliged us to do it less than 19 squillion times. The actual challenge offered by the minigame will usually fall into one of the following categories. On the simplest level, you have hold down button until thing is hacked, which isn't much of a minigame, but it's not nothing. Often the challenge with this kind of thing is less the act of holding down the button and more in picking your moment to do it. You might have to be keeping your head on a swivel for patrolling guards and be ready to abandon the button pressing at any moment if anyone starts giving you funny looks. Consider also the computer hacking in Deus Ex 1, where the hack succeeds immediately, but the challenge is in finishing up your business on the computer before the timer runs out. Moving into more complex hacking systems, a lot of them fall under the twin headings of move thing to a thing or draw a line connecting thing to a thing, which summarizes the goal in the hacking minigames of System Shock 2, Bioshock, Deus Ex Human Revolution, Pragmata, and many more. There's also reflex challenge, such as Bioshock 2, where you have to press a button when a needle moves into the green, the try everything until you find the right one variety, seen in the likes of Oblivion and the Batman Arkham games, where the objective is to push the analog stick at different angles until you find the sweet spot. That's a popular one with lockpicking minigames specifically. Replaced demonstrates a match the two images challenge, which you don't see quite as often, and pulls it off rather well, I think. But the variety of gameplay one could have in a hacking minigame is as varied as video game genres themselves. All that matters is that it's a little snacky challenge that's different to the main gameplay loop. So let's move on to our second question. What are hacking minigames for? Well, to explore that, we need to consider the importance of pushback in game design. Do you find it entertaining in Grand Theft Auto to drive like a madman, smash into other cars, run over pedestrians, and gun down the survivors? Probably, you horrible person. But what makes being a horrible person in that game fun is not the being horrible in itself, but the fact that the game tries to stop you. It sends cops with guns. And that is an example of pushback. Without that, it'd be boring. You'd just feel like you were smashing toys together in a sandpit. Obviously, a game requires challenge, but part of that, and at the same time kind of separate from that, is that the player needs to feel challenged. It's a classic bit of reverse psychology that keeps us engaged. When the game tacitly says to us, you're not allowed to do that, you can't come in here, this isn't for you. Our first instinct is to defy authority, and doing so contributes to the textured mix of catharsis a game offers. Also, pushback is a handy way to indicate to a player that something is important, and that they're on the right track. Also, it's a method by which the developer can pace the game, slowing the player down and dribbling out access bit at a time, so we don't get confused by too much getting thrown at us at once. Also, it's good for establishing context. If our character is infiltrating somewhere they're not supposed to be, it stands to reason that there'll be a few locked doors around. The traditional pushback of any game that involves exploring an environment, besides all the monsters trying to kill you and shit, is of course key hunting. A door's locked, and we have to explore the other rooms to find the key or the button that opens it. But the problem with that is, you kind of have to design the entire level around it, make everything between the door and the key some kind of cohesive path. And that became less tenable as level design became more sophisticated, when the aforementioned immersive sims had the watchword that there should be multiple viable paths to success, and environments that are doing a lot more to build context and generally serve multiple purposes, and are supposed to represent actual functioning environments like residences and workplaces rather than monster mazes. In short, when you have more routes and points of interest, they can't all be gated behind key hunts. There's no room to map out all the routes. A need arose for a form of pushback that could be localized to the door itself, that could still gate the important discovery discoveries and slow the player down. Step forward, hacking minigames, which were particularly useful in games with RPG elements, because as an isolated minigame, it's usually pretty easy to scale the difficulty up and down based on the player's stats and give them another option for how to build their character. So let's move on to the question of what makes a hacking minigame good. And this is where things are going to get a bit subjective. Some people like such things to be as simplistic as possible so they don't interrupt things too much, like Deus Ex 1 hacking. Others appreciate more complex systems with lots of nuances that offer a bit of a coffee break from regular gameplay, like Deus Ex Human Revolution hacking. For me, I think it depends on how often I'm going to be doing this minigame. I want it to be simple if I'm going to be doing it a lot, but I don't mind it being elaborate if it's just a once-in-a-while thing, like the hacking in Dispatch. This was the problem with the all-too-frequent pipe dream shenanigans in Bioshock 1, that and the fact that it took up the full screen and completely disconnected you from the rest of the game, slamming the brakes on anything that was happening at the time. I much prefer the System Shock 2 approach, where you have to stay alert for roaming monsters and reactivating turrets while you're madly pressing the buttons, as it keeps the gameplay loops flowing nicely. On that note, for me, I also like a hacking minigame to evoke the feel of traditional movie hacking. That is to say, madly pressing buttons, apparently at random, while looking like you know what you're doing, then smashing enter and going, "That's it, I've cracked the Pentagon." Something very satisfying about that whole action. Musical, almost. Tappy 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 smash, I'm in. I think Pragmata pulls that off with the rapidly pressing face buttons to move the square around the grid. Back when I was doing my 12 games in 12 months challenge, I prototyped a game called Casey Joint that was very much based on this principle, in which you played a hacker doing various mini-games that all in some way involved randomly smashing keys as fast as possible. And I think the theory was sound, although I doubt I'll follow up on it, because I'm worried about getting blamed for people breaking their keyboards. That's one last nail in the coffin of the Bioshock 1 hacking minigame. No fast-paced tappy-tap Mr. Cool Hacker feelings there. I just feel like a jobbing plumber who's just opened the cupboard under the sink and is now looking over the pipes going, "Who did this last, love?" Sorry, I didn't mean to keep harping on the Bioshock 1 hacking this whole time. I'd hate it to feel picked on. The hacking in Fallout 3 is kinda shit as well. But what are your thoughts? Let us know in the comments. Maybe you think the Bioshock 1 hacking is cool, actually. I mean, it didn't come back in the sequel, so the fucking developers didn't. Maybe you have a favourite or least favourite hacking minigame to bring up. Maybe you think hacking minigames are always bad, and they should do more to be more faithful to real-life hacking. Like a minigame where you send a friend request to a stranger on social media, and then send lots of unwanted pizzas to their home address.